Keep your hands and head inside the vehicle at all times. Buckle your seatbelts, check your mirrors, sit on back and relax. It's lights out and away we go for the Tall and Short of It podcast. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast, coming to you live from a hole in the roof. I'm your host, Justin.
And I'm Aaron. That is a concerning place to be recording from today, but welcome back for another episode of the podcast, everyone. Looking forward to it. We have some big news, of course, that we'll get into. British Grand Prix recap, some League of Legends, some Magic the Gathering. But Justin, it is good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you too. We are still dry, but it's as the news stations say, it's a developing problem. But yeah, man, happy to see you for another week. How have you been? You want to start off with the Rose Thorn Seed here?
Sure, I'll kick it off. So my rose and my seed kind of go together here. But my rose was that the babysitting went fine. The baby is still alive. He was handed back to my sister and her fiance and all at the end of the day, and now
all the limbs attached.
All limbs attached.
Yeah.
I mean, if something is weird about him in the future, he took those tumbles on his own. He's not moving around very much, but he was still. I felt like I had to like Hawkeye him the whole time. But overall, went pretty smoothly. He, tried to pull himself up on a little, like 1 foot off the ground, like little cradle thing, and he, like, tipped over and bonked his head and cried the one time. But overall, not too bad. One mini diaper meltdown. But it wasn't the worst thing in the world. And like I said, he's fine. He's well. I'm okay. It was a very long day, though. I was there from 8:30 in the morning till 11:30 at night, which I will definitely be asking how long I'm being requested to babysit for in the future, as opposed to just being like, sure, open-ended. But that was good. But my seed is that I don't have to babysit anymore in the foreseeable future. My parents are back from vacation, and
there you go.
Although I enjoyed spending time with my nephew, I'm okay not doing the full-time babysitter thing for a while, or at least until he can do a little bit more. And everything other than sleep, cry, and like need full attention. Like I would like for him to be able to play a little on his own or with me, as opposed to just kind of crying at me here and there. So yeah, that's my seed. I'm glad that it went well, but I'm also glad it's over. But my thorn this week is just kind of a continuation. Work has been just rough with all these cable and internet issues. I've continued to have to deal with stuff for those on a pretty daily basis, it just takes away a lot of time from getting other work done. So I'm hoping that we can get through the rest of this transition of equipment and all, and put that in the rear view so that I can just not have to worry about it for the foreseeable future. But
now, is that a result of tenants moving in and out, and in getting things like, okay, this isn't in their name anymore, it's in this name, and like...
Unfortunately not. It's basically the owners of the company, or the owners of our property prior to us, had a contract for 70 apartments to be charged for all the equipment and everything together, for like the furnished apartments. We don't have 70 of those anymore. We only have about 40. So continuing to be billed for like 70 apartments makes no sense. And so this transition is basically to say, hey, we aren't going to be in this contract anymore. We need all of these accounts like grouped together under a new thing, and also that we're only paying for what we need. But for whatever reason, when they turn off the old account and turn on the new one with all the same exact equipment and cable boxes, modems, everything, none of them work on the new account. So it's like this constant like swapping things out, and then some things work, and then some of the new equipment doesn't work, so then you have to swap it back, and like just once we get through that of like changing all the new equipment into the apartments, it should be something that I just never have to think about, which I'm looking forward to again. So
Gotcha.
it should just like run smoothly on its own and all. So yeah, that's the rose, thorn, and seed over this way for the week. But what's been going on over your way?
So we've had some high rains and some wind, and it's been on the it's been on the to-do list for a little while, but because there's been like a little brown patch on one of the ceiling tiles in our, like, we have a little drop ceiling in our living room. Been monitoring it, same size, same cut, for a long time. It's been okay. We got some winds, we got some rains coming in, and that like has developed significantly. Landlord coming this weekend to hopefully patch things up and find the issue, find what's going on. But that may mean, for the weekend we may have some busyness going on with us here. But
Gotcha.
Yes, that's my rose, or my thorn here for the week.
I was about to say, if that's the rose, I don't know if I want to keep going.
Holy shit! Yeah, that's actually funny. So yeah, that's my thorn. My rose here, I completed this is going to sound odd, I completed a Lego that I had gotten as a gift. I guess this would have been like last Christmas or whatever.
Oh, weird.
It was a little Paris architecture collection where you build like the Eiffel Tower, the Arc and everything else.
Nice.
And added it to our little collection above the door. And I just always enjoy those. It's fun how something that I thought, like, there was probably a point in my life, and I may have said this to you before, where I figured I would have aged out of something like this, but it's interesting. Some of the product lines, like Lego had kind of grown up where they have so many different offerings that you can kind of go in. I'll do this. I'll say more adult routes, right? Like they have like the bonsai trees. You can do like the flowers.
Yeah.
They have like more tasteful looking things that aren't like
Okay.
pops of like arcade color and things like this.
That's a better way to put it, I think, because more adult Legos sounds like sex Legos. So
that's actually what I'm talking about. It's just like.
So when you said bonsai tree, I was like, no. But no, I think it's like part of the nature of us growing up at a time where I just feel like a lot of different things have grown up kind of with us as we've gotten older. Especially with those like older, what do they call them? Like just analog toys, non-digital things, video games, iPads, whatever else these kids are playing these days. So I think it's definitely cool that Lego has like continued to create some of those things that have scaled with us over the years.
Oh, yeah, it's really neat. We have a couple decorating the apartment. And then my seed here for the week, I borrowed my dad's little staple gun, brought it to the office, repaired some office furniture we had, just some upholstery that was peeling apart. So just thack, get some staples in there. It worked really well. Now they're like kind of good as new, which is really sweet. Now we won't be like dropping staples everywhere. Hopefully it should be pretty locked in tight. So yeah, other than that, it's been a pretty good week. So that's my rose thorn seed. You want to get into the rest of the episode here?
Sure. Let's just dive into it. I have a lot of quick hitters for today that are being delayed to next week because Daniel Ricciardo is back and I want to talk about it. Danny Ricks is back in Alpha Tauri now, still with the Red Bull organization. He has been swapped in for Nick DeVries, and will immediately be stepping into that race seat for Alpha Tauri. It's much quicker than I expected. What were your initial thoughts? I think I probably broke that news to you when I sent you that message, but you might have.
That was the first I was hearing about it. I was like weirdly not surprised because we had been talking about it the previous week. You know, you look at the performance over the weekend, like really uninspired, the kind of result that like would warrant that kind of thing to happen. And maybe at the same time like quite happy, but yeah, it does seem like they said this, you know, they laid out an objective, you would say. It wasn't met, so they went with, you know, one of the top dudes available because, you know, based on, you know, after you look into it, based on the tire test times that he did for them, like, it was very solid. So this guy seems to still be at a quite competitive level, and it'll be interesting to see, you know, what he can do.
Yeah, and I think that's like one of the really interesting parts of it is obviously I think like you said, we've been talking about it. There were questions more so of who will replace Nick DeVries as opposed to will he be replaced. Whether that was Liam Lawson, Iwasa, Daniel Ricciardo, but I think the speed that it happened at was what caught me off guard a little bit because we were kind of told, oh, we're waiting till the summer break. Oh, we're waiting till after Zandvoort. We're not sure yet. We're weighing out our options. Nick DeVries has 4 more races or whatever to prove himself, and only got 2 of those 4 races to be able to give it a shot. I do agree with you, though. His performances have been pretty lackluster, and especially this past weekend. But I think the other component of it is, like you said, Daniel Ricciardo's lap times in the Pirelli tire test were really, really good. His best lap would have been worthy of front row on the grid at the British Grand Prix. So he was really cruising, and that seems to be what kind of made the decision or I guess the timeline speed up so much. And apparently he had also been beating out like DeVries and Yuki, I think, on the sim times, and DeVries was not hitting his like benchmarks that they had in the sim either, apparently.
Surprising.
So he like he didn't hit, apparently he didn't hit his benchmarks in the sim, and then was given more opportunities after. They're like, you have this many opportunities to like hit these benchmarks compared to Yuki. And he didn't hit them, and they're like, we'll give you a few more shots, and he still struggled to hit those marks. So it does make sense to make the move, but I definitely was surprised by how quickly it kind of came up after this weekend.
Yeah, fair enough. And I mean, that kind of makes sense to me. But from a more like historical perspective, it maybe more surprising from a different team. But Red Bull has shown in the past that they're not afraid to just make these really drastic roster moves midway. You're just in the middle of a season, while a season is still going on, I would say, like when they dropped Pierre Gasly down to Toro Rosso, like these things happened like right after race weekends as well.
Oh
So
yeah.
from that angle, it is kind of within their kind of playbook. But yeah, you would have thought, I guess, just from like a team's word angle, they said they would give this many opportunities. He didn't receive all of those, but the question then is like, yeah, but is it really going to make that much of a difference?
I think the answer is no, and it's like
Sure.
I don't. It's kind of a like gray area or like a little bit of this, a little bit of that kind of situation. I feel like because you have the Red Bull set the expectation of this is the timeline we're giving him, which is why I think I feel like Nick got slighted a little bit. Not a lot. He kind of sucked in the car. But if you're saying, at least outwardly, like from our perspective, we're going, oh, he has this much time, and then they cut it short, and that would feel pretty shitty. I'm assuming internally that there were many more conversations going on than what we're hearing, and like, hey, like you need to do this. Hey, this is what we're looking for. Like, or we're gonna have to look at our options and whatnot. But one other thing that actually I didn't realize that I heard when some other folks were talking about this online, but Nick DeVries is 28 years old. I didn't realize that, and so he's 3 years older than Max is. And so looking at it in that sense, you're a rookie in F1, you're already older than a number of guys on the grid who have been on the grid for a bit. He's older than Max, he's older than Lando, like he might be older than Albon and Pierre. Like he's
Definitely older than George Russell, right?
yeah, I would think so. Yeah, he's older than Pierre Gasly. He's older than Carlos Sainz. Same age as Carlos Sainz. So like he is older than probably about half the grid as a rookie. And so
And the other people that are older than him are like veteran status in some
yeah,
senses. Like
exactly. Lewis,
Checo.
Alonso, Checo, Magnussen, Hulkenberg,
Yep. Yep.
like those guys are of course,
Valtteri.
like Valtteri, they're veterans. Like they've been around for quite a while in F1 and
Right.
all. So
Dude, go back to what you said, the Carlos Sainz. That literally blows my mind because you can just do a 1-to-1 comparison right there. They're like the same age, and look at the like performance level of these individuals.
right,
Like 1-to-1, and yet, like, yeah, you got to factor in the car that is available to them big time, but just from you're talking about like longevity in the sport, kind of like the window, right? We're talking about the window of performance
yeah. Well,
and time available.
and Nick is so like Carlos started in Toro Rosso. He started
Yeah.
with the Red Bull organization in what became Alpha Tauri, and he
Yep.
performed well enough. Obviously, the car was a little bit more competitive at that time, but it was still like a midfield to towards the back of the pack kind of car, as Red Bull's sister team and everything. But Carlos and Max both, and many other Red Bull drivers, Albon, Gasly, it came up through that car and that team and all, and passed on into the Red Bull or other bigger organizations, Ferrari, McLaren, and whatnot. So yeah, that was a big surprise to me when I saw that or when I realized like how old Nick was, because I think that also plays into it. Like you have to look at like the prime ages for these young talents is that like right around that 25-year-old mark is when these guys are kind of hitting their stride a bit in F1. Not peak necessarily, like we said. There's the Alonsos, the Hamiltons, the Checos, who the longevity of their career continues and their performance does as well. But he's already past that, like, kind of, you should be at X level by this age. And so
he's like on the struggle bus.
Yeah. So I think that is was the thing that like kind of flipped the switch for me a little bit of like, oh, okay, like yeah, this makes a lot more sense now. I do think that it is a bit like he's definitely it's a rough go of it. Like Alpha Tauri made this big like excited Danny Rick is back post and everything. There was no thank you Nick DeVries post or anything that I have seen from anyone in the Red Bull or Alpha Tauri organization. There was no like even how the LCS teams do it, and they're like, "Thank you, Biofrost, for all of your mistooks." Like
they give a full YouTube video.
Yeah,
they give him an edit and everything.
He didn't even get like a 30-word tweet. Like
he didn't even get like a Twitter post.
Exactly, and so I feel for him in a small way, just because I do think that, hey, he came out there, he gave it a go, he did his best, it wasn't good enough, and like that sometimes happens in life. But to just like replace him and then be like, so yeah, we packed your bags for you actually, and you have a plane ticket already. Actually, here, get in this car. We're taking you to the airport right now. Bye bye. Kind of situation is, I mean, it's not the most professional thing in my opinion. But at the same time, I guess he hadn't been like this long member of the Red Bull organization. He only became part of it by being signed this year after his performances as a reserve driver last year. So it's not like they have this big, long-standing like friendship and love for Nick DeVries or anything. But I felt like they should have thrown him a little bit of a bone with like, thanks for your hard work, Nick. We wish you the best of luck on your future endeavors. Even if it's super cliche, like a little something would be kind of polite.
Yeah, but maybe it's just more real where it's like, your effort was not appreciated. We needed you to do so much better. Get the fuck out of here.
But you're a business. Like, you gotta be at least a little bit, like, polite and professional.
Dude, I don't know, man. With Helmut Marko as...
He's so inflammatory, I know. But still, like someone in the organization needs to, like, do... Just like a real short... Thanks for your efforts. Best of luck. Like,
yeah, it's unfortunate for the guy. They were so excited that Daniel Ricciardo was coming back that they just forgot. They totally forgot.
And that's the other crazy thing is just like the excitement from like I feel for Nick DeVries right now. I hope he like deleted Twitter and Facebook and every social media off his phone. Man, while I was eating dinner, I was just scrolling TikTok a little bit and came across an Alpha Tauri TikTok that was Nick DeVries and Yuki from like a month ago, and all of the comments on that TikTok were like about Nick leaving and being kicked out and like all this stuff, like, oh, you should pull this one down and things like that. I hope he does not pay attention to all of that stuff on social media, because I think not only like to be kicked from the team and everything, and to feel crappy about that, but then to also get all the online hate, and then on top of that, see that everyone in the world is just pumped about his replacement. Like, that has to be so demoralizing.
Yeah. And not a great spot to be in. You're right, you would have to be pretty fucked up to, like, wish that on somebody. Because, yeah, now that you're, like, kind of laying it out, that is pretty wild. I'm not even sure I thought about it from that angle. I guess we've just been, like, as fans, we've just been very unimpressed with what sounded like a pretty good prospect. I think he had some pretty good results to talk about. But yeah, now that you're pointing out just like the wave of love that comes in behind that, it's just like, damn, dude, that actually does suck.
Yeah.
Well, and I looked up Daniel Ricciardo's age. He's 36. He's so what? That's 8 years older than DeVries, and
Yeah.
like we're talking about prime window, where it's like, wow. So even a driver that's, yeah, and many other drivers are doing it, but like they're getting somebody older than him to come in and say like, no, this is what we need more.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, we kind of saw it similarly with Mazepin and Haas, with him being replaced by a more seasoned veteran and everything coming in with K Mag and all.
That's a good point.
So it's not like an unreasonable thing to do. But just overall, it was a little whirlwind of a couple days here that we've had after that was announced, just seeing all the stuff and conversations and everything. But it also opens up more conversations a little bit for Daniel Ricciardo's role in the Alpha Tauri team, with his role in the Red Bull organization. Apparently Red Bull, over the past little few days and all, has started to, or I guess according to this tweet, over the last few weeks, Red Bull has approached both Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris potentially about the second seat position, just as kind of preliminary conversations and all, as Checo has really struggled. But this also, I think we've talked about like the potential for Yuki to move up to a Red Bull seat down the line and everything, if he continues to improve, or at least that's, I think, like most of our hopes with Yuki, because
yeah, for sure,
we saw a lot of promise and talent with him coming in. He's developed into a better driver. He still has his moments, of course, but
real slow burner though here.
Yeah, but I think in general, this is now like, you've seen that Daniel Ricciardo in that Red Bull car can be like up there with the pace and everything, that he is competitive. He's been competitive on the sim racer. He's been all that. So now I think we'll get a good perspective on where Yuki is a little bit more than seeing a Yuki versus Nick DeVries battle, or Yuki when he is still very new, just kind of getting beat consistently by a seasoned Pierre Gasly and everything. So I think this is going to be a good opportunity, at least for this season, to benchmark like where Yuki is at. Because if Daniel Ricciardo comes out and just starts beating Yuki every time and is like getting closer into the points more consistently and all, it's going to raise a lot of questions about Yuki. Or if Yuki performs really competitively with Daniel, and they said, hey, Daniel was competitive in the Red Bull car, and if they start really trading races and all and going back and forth, then that does give a better idea of like if Yuki is progressing towards that next step in his F1 career.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, we're just talking about these racers as individuals. I mean, this is now like magical Christmas land, but let's say Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki are trading races back and forth. What a what a boon for Alpha Tauri. Like that means all of a sudden they're probably getting decent results. If they're beating each other, that means they're, somewhere in and around that, 9-10 position. That tends to be like Yuki's average.
Yeah.
This weekend, not so much specifically. But yeah, it sounds like it could be similar to like an Albon Logan Sargent scenario from like rounds 3 to 7 kind of thing, where Albon is like getting. I think you could use the word considerable. I think Albon was getting considerably more out of the car than Logan was, and just based on the tablespoons more experience that Daniel Ricciardo would have over Yuki, I think we may get that kind of thing. But you're right, talking about the maybe space this might give Yuki from a fan perspective to, like you're saying, see like what his kind of true form is in comparison to a competent driver.
Yeah,
Right.
he'll have a much better like benchmark to be up against and to be compared to. And the other thing, like it's still, and this is, I guess, the other positive of Alpha Tauri making this move now instead of waiting more. They have quickly fallen like pretty far off the pace in terms of the constructors standings as well. Like Alfa Romeo, Haas are not making any great jumps forward, but Alpha Tauri is 2 points this season.
Right.
Alfa Romeo is 9, Haas has 11, Williams has 11. I expect Williams to continue and to kind of stay up above Haas, Alfa Romeo, and Alpha Tauri based on their improvements and progress. But that, I mean, 2 points, what is this? 8 races into the season, 9 races into the season now, with 9 races in, 13 to go, and you have 2 points at 9 races, and you're 7 points back. Based on current pace, you're going to end up with 5 points or so at the end of the season, which is not going to bring you anywhere close to moving up in that constructor standing. Right. So this at least gives a couple more races of opportunity for Alpha Tauri to try and kind of claw their way back and maybe snatch 1, if not 2 places in the constructors, if they can pick up a few extra points by having a second driver who might be able to give them that.
It sounds like this puts a lot on Daniel Ricciardo's shoulders, though.
Yes and no. I feel like the team improvement definitely relies a lot on him, because Yuki has done what he could a bit, and he's still putting in the effort and all. But if they can get a second guy to scoop some points, yeah. But at the same time, I think they're in last right now. Like, what is there to lose? If Daniel Ricciardo can't get them above Haas or Alfa Romeo or whatever, like, he didn't put them in this hole. So I don't think it's that much weight, because I feel like the expectations for the team to like climb up the standings is probably relatively low.
Yeah, okay. But then if he's not here to pull them out of this whole deficit, slump, whatever you want to say, so then like what else is the thing? Like,
well, I think that is the hope. I think that is the goal of this, is to give Yuki a better teammate to drive next to and hopefully bring them out. But at the same time, I don't think that Daniel Ricciardo, I guess like saying the weight's on his shoulders for this, I don't think Daniel is going to get any flack if Alpha Tauri doesn't climb up the standings. I think they need him to potentially climb up the standings over Nick DeVries. But I don't think that there's maybe a ton of pressure, because I don't think the expectation is that they're going to just like rock it up.
Okay. So he's the driver that we need, but he doesn't have to do well?
No. I mean, I think the expectation is for him to be a solid, consistent driver, but based on the Alpha Tauri and the car, getting points is not going to be the easiest. I'm not saying that, like, he's not a miracle worker. He's not going to be Jesus coming in and turning wet races into points. Like, he's not, like, I love Danny Ricks, and I think the goal is for him to, hopefully help give more opportunity for the team to score points, climb up the standings, get better feedback on the car to develop it more with a more veteran driver who's driven a number of different cars and can maybe give some good feedback. But at the same time, I don't think they're going to go, well, like Danny only got us 7 points the rest of the season, and we ended up with 9 points and Alfa Romeo snagged one more and we still end up in last. Daniel Ricciardo's fault. Get him out of here. Like, that's what I mean in terms of pressure. I don't think they're like, I think the pressure is more so internal on like improvements, hopefully climbing. Daniel Ricciardo, I'm sure his pressure is from himself on getting back into a competitive race seat. But, I mean, I think the goal is to hopefully climb up, obviously with a better driver in the second Alpha Tauri seat. But
right.
I just don't think that it's super high pressure in terms of, like, if he doesn't get them up the standings, like, it wasn't the right decision or he's not the right fit, he's gone kind of thing.
Gotcha. Yeah, okay. So it's more about like building momentum for next year, improve where you can, but like to use your term, we're not rocketing up the standings here. So this is more about like,
I mean,
like building consistency towards 2024.
Yeah, because I mean, like it is going to be tough to score points based on the way the Alpha Tauri's progressed compared to other teams. I mean,
yeah, for sure.
When you have 2 drivers from Red Bull, 2 drivers from Mercedes, 2 drivers from McLaren, 2 drivers from Aston, 2 drivers from Ferrari, there's 5 teams that in most cases should take the top 10 positions, with Alpine sneaking in there here and there, some Williams here and there. So like there's only 10 points positions. So I just think the expectation to be able to just like come in and just steal all these points and go crazy would just be a pretty tall ask, especially when, like, for this race we saw McLaren go from a car that was down in P15, P16, struggling, to over the past 2 races, jumping up, getting a podium, almost a double podium. So the competition for the top 10 spots, I think, is tight. So Alpha Tauri, I think it's improvement, testing out Yuki, hopefully getting some more points, maybe sneaking above 1 or 2 teams in the constructors, but mostly kind of aimed at progress.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that makes sense to me. It just seems like and this goes all the way back to the beginning of the conversation where we talked about like how sudden it felt, is like, yeah, but isn't that what these like mid-season before the driver break, like jam this fucking hero in the seat, get the guy out of here, like, oh, it would have been good enough for like second on the grid, man, like this guy
in the Red
you know
Bull.
what I'm saying? Sure, but you know what I'm saying? There's this feeling of urgency that comes along with a move like this. And in my mind, I'm looking at that thinking like, that's a lot of what I would call pressure. But from your explanation of it, yeah, I kind of would understand it better. You're right. While the immediacy of the move may feel like that, there's a flow build that's got to happen, right?
Right, because to be honest, the Alpha Tauri
It's like not that great.
It's a brutal car right now.
Yeah.
It's struggling to do just about anything. And I just, even Max jumping into that Alpha Tauri seat is not gonna necessarily be the miracle that's gonna drag them up the grid. Like, I don't know if there is a driver based on the quality of the car right now and not knowing what they have in the pipeline and everything.
Right.
For that car to just go, like, throw Lewis and Max in the two Alpha Tauri seats and they still might end up last. Like, that's just might be the way that it is at this point. So
Gotcha.
You hope that it isn't, and I think that's why the urgency is give the maximum amount of time to hopefully do this. But at the same time, you have to have like the realistic side of the expectations of like, our drivers finished P16 and no, hold on. What was the finish here?
No, you're right.
No, 16 and 17. Yeah, the last two that were not DNFs, and that's not a great spot to be in. Like, you're the last on the grid and a couple seconds off of the Alfa Romeo's pace after a safety car restart at the end of the race. So there is that limitation, but at the same time, I think that the urgency, like that, the goal is to hopefully jump up, but at the same time, the expectation is you might not.
Right. I think as you're describing this issue, I believe you're in some way helping me realize maybe a flaw in my analysis sometimes of these scenarios is I think I always overrate the skill of the driver and believe like, oh, if you put a better driver in this car, that'll be worth, like, in my head, I probably attach like an arbitrary like +6 positions to that. I'm like, oh,
Gotcha.
like Max in an Alpha Tauri, he'd be okay,
Like
+6.
P8, like
Right,
Yeah.
right. Like that's what I do with it. So yeah, maybe you're more on the button where it's like, no, it may only make the difference of, in this scenario, like if he's in Yuki's seat, okay, he's just P15. Like it still could be that bad. So yeah, maybe that's an interesting thing where the car can gate driver's skill significantly.
Yeah, and it's
Okay.
like tough for us to gauge too, because like I said, like, for one, you and I are not we don't know all the technical in and outs of every car. I can't say like, oh yeah, the Red Bull has just this in terms of downforce and yada 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 compared to the Ferrari or the Mercedes and all, and that's really where the Mercedes is like falling behind. Like, I'm just watching the cars go. I hear what upgrades are being brought, but I don't know how that affects the aero. And at the end of the day, like, I think the cars are much more of an enigma to us than the drivers. So that's why we kind of weight the driver performance more heavily, because we just like that's what we know the most. So it's
Whoa, well said. Yeah, no, that sounds pretty right to me.
So
The cars are an enigma. Holy shit.
I think to some of the teams, their own car is an enigma. So I think that I'm on the edge of my seat, looking forward to seeing how he does. Not this weekend, but next weekend at the Hungarian Grand Prix. In that Alpha Tauri seat, I'm looking forward to it because I want to see what kind of difference that does make. Like, maybe it is just beating Yuki, or maybe it's, oh, well, he had a nice battle with Zhou for P14 or P13 or something like that, and he was really, like, giving it a go, but the tire wear just was too strong on the Alpha Tauri, and he just falls back after, or who knows, but I'm definitely intrigued by it, and intrigued to see how a lot of teams do, especially after this past weekend at the British Grand Prix. We had a pretty good race weekend, and a very exciting one, especially to start off with the qualifying, to have a McLaren 2-3 coming out of the qualifying session, and Lando just 2.5 tenths off of Max there at the end, taking provisional pole. I still need them to say provisional when they're announcing it on the qualifying, because I hate when they say, and Lando takes pole, and then 30 seconds later, oh, and Max takes pole. Like, you gotta throw the provisional pole in there until everyone's finished for me.
I think in most scenarios, I agree. It is a bit of a mouthful. So I can understand in the interest of expediency to cut it out every now and again, but sure, there's a lack of precision when you do that. I gotcha.
Yeah, it's almost, though, it seems to me more of they want the sound bite of, like, so say Max,
it right there.
Yeah, say Max didn't put in that lap over Lando at the end, then they're like, they have that excited, like, sudden Lando crosses the line, he takes pole, they have that soundbite, as opposed to, like, and Lando's on provisional pole, and Max can't get him, but I feel like that could still be just as exciting, but it's almost like a soundbite thing, and it bugs me every time.
Sure, okay, yeah, I didn't even think of that angle, but you're right, for the, for the highlights edit.
Yeah, like, that's what it feels like. I could be off base, fair. But that's how it sounds. But just to say, Lando and Oscar had, with the upgrades on Oscar's car, not all of them. Lando got a couple more this week, but just a phenomenal start to the weekend. I think they were both pretty surprised to have that kind of leap in performance. Obviously, Lando had a good week last race with the upgrades and everything, but
yeah, P4 in Austria.
Yeah, but this was, I think, not quite as expected, and I mean, throughout the weekend, the rest of the weekend, and post race and everything, we heard from a number of drivers, including Lewis, just being, like, blown away by the progress that McLaren's made with their car and everything to move forward on the grid. But talking about qualifying still, we, of course, had another Q1 exit for Sergio Perez. I briefly mentioned it with Red Bull starting to try and have conversations, but Checo just really struggling with, especially with the, I guess, like, there was the red flag that Checo then goes out front of the pack waiting on the in the lineup to go on the grid and everything after the red flag. Ice cold tires.
That's not all on Sergio.
No,
that's like
no.
a misreading of how that session is going to go and not understanding that in some way not understanding that the fastest lap times were going to be at the end of the session as opposed to right at the top of the session.
Yeah.
And maybe there was something that went wrong with the program where they didn't get like a quick enough lap in on that like original hot lap stint. But I don't think it's all on, like, just looking at the, front of the queue. I don't think that's all on Sergio, but
No.
He definitely fucking pays for it.
He does, and even with that, like, so,
like, is that all the driver's call to say, like, I want to be out there first?
No.
Okay.
I agree that it's definitely a combination issue. I still think that with a warm-up lap and a hot lap with the Red Bull, you should, even if you're on colder tires than people behind you, you should still get out of that bottom 5. Just based on the car and Checo's, I mean, he's not a bad driver. Like, he's proven, he's a veteran. Like, I would think that those, along with how good of a car the Red Bull is, should get him out of the bottom 5. That's where, like, because then Q2 and Q3,
he didn't get an opportunity to set another time. That's what I'm saying.
Well, no, I mean, like, him coming out at the end there, he did put in another time, but it was just beat by everyone behind him. I still think the Red Bull should not be, I think it's good enough to be in the top 15 even coming out on cold tires.
Okay,
and
I'm with you.
Like, I do understand Red Bull's worry, because when I was watching the qualifying and had my little nephew right next to me, and I'm like, all right, bro, watch this. Don't cry. I'm sitting there, and I was fuming watching Lewis hold Max back coming out of the pit lanes. He was driving so slow. There was barely, like, the time needed, I think, to get in a warm-up lap, and then a hot lap. Like, maybe Checo could have gone for a second hot lap, maybe, if he really zipped it on the out lap. But for most of these drivers, like, you're getting your out lap, and you're, like, when they were coming around, I was pretty sure it was, like, gonna be tight to the line whether or not Max and Lewis were even going to get across to start their hot lap. So I was sitting there, and I'm glad that Checo wasn't in that, and I get why Red Bull would have wanted him out of the way of potentially being held up in the pack and everything. I still think that the Red Bull's a good enough car, along with Checo, to get out of the bottom 5. When you've got Alpha Tauris, Haas's, and Alfa Romeos out on the circuit.
Yeah, if you look at just from, like, the Red Bull perspective, yeah, of course. But from the, just, like, if you look at the session, it was actually kind of wild that it was developing in that way.
It was,
especially because, like, there were so many, like, I'm pretty sure that's when cars were still like some people started on inters, some people started on softs. So like it still wasn't clear how the weather was going to go. We were
Right.
like we started qualifying in like very changeable conditions.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you can understand a little bit of that where some teams like were just kind of able to get it right, say like, no, we think the best lap times are going to come towards the end of the session after it ramps up a little bit, where like no more water comes to wash any of the the rubbering in away. So I think from that perspective, yeah, like unfortunate for Red Bull, but kind of fascinating for everybody else, where like you would think that would be the read that Red Bull would have,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And so it's interesting that it's that team that gets kind of disadvantaged in that position, but just from like a qualifying session perspective overall, kind of fascinating how that like makes everything else happen. Where you do have what should be a top car like way out of position.
Oh yeah, and like the weather, having the weird weather definitely does that, and the way, especially with the red flag too, that killed a lot of people's hot laps. It killed a lot of
Right.
people's like kind of planned strategy, tire temperature, and all. So definitely an odd one. But moving further into qualifying, we end up with Valtteri Bottas getting DQ'd because he doesn't finish a lap because he ran out of gas. Interesting way for for you to be disqualified and end your qualifying session by just hitting E while you're going around the circuit.
Dude, it was actually speed strats. If you have less fuel in the car, you can go faster.
And
They were on the edge.
until you have no fuel in the
Yeah.
car.
Dude, it's like he if he would have set a sick fast time, like yeah, all right, cool. And then everybody's going to do that. But, you know, it's like Charles Leclerc. He's always driving on the edge, and when you're doing that, sometimes you're gonna have it off. I think that's all it was. That
That's
was
what
Alfa Romeo like min maxing hardcore.
that's what Colleen thinks about me with filling up my car, because I'm like, oh, how far am I driving? Oh, I got 20 miles left on the little thing, and I'm only going 5. I'll get gas after I get there.
Oh, I do Exactsy's math. I'm like, I'll be just pulling into that Wawa just on fumes. You'll just hear the putter putter right as you hit the thing.
I
Like,
mean,
there you go.
I've run into that mostly because I like think I have it planned out, but then don't realize where the nearest gas station is.
Sure.
But nonetheless, a tough way for Valtteri to end up starting P20. But the next round, I mean, we had Nico Hulkenberg pulling more performance out of that Haas car than Kevin Magnussen again in qualifying, jumping up and starting P11 over Magnussen, who started down in P19. So he's continuously getting this better performance in that one lap pace.
That was a DNF though. Magnussen lost engine power.
In the race, though. Or wait.
Both. It was
Oh,
both.
that's
Yeah.
right. I forgot he did. My
Yeah, so
apologies to K-Mag.
that's
Yeah.
what the unfortunate status for Magnussen was.
Yeah. So, so Magnussen, sorry, I did forget about that.
You're good.
But you're 100% right there. So tough qualifying, but Nico Hulkenberg putting the car up in P11 to start. But then going into the last quali session, I mean, we had Alex Albon make it into Q3 again. We ended up, like we said, with Max with the 2 McLarens right behind him at the end of the day. And going into the race, I was excited. I guess we can lead into it. I want to hear from you though, the start of the race, watching it. What were your expectations with Lando right there in P2? And then, like, how was your reaction after the start?
It's kind of the feeling of, just surprising off like right at the start that just Lando had a better start, full stop, right? Just gets off the line way better, gets into turn one way better. And then it was I guess I was more surprised that Max didn't immediately just take that P1. I think it was fun to see Lando, leading the race for like 5 laps. So I guess it was a bit of surprise at the start of the race that the McLarens were able to put up so much of a fight. Like
Yeah.
it was yeah, it's cool to have like a great start, but like usually you just lose that in turn 3 and then whatever Max is gone and you're relegated 2-3 and that's
Yep.
fine. But it was like the fun thing of like, oh no, okay, all right, cool. He's like driving now. He's like out in front.
Yeah.
You think that's always just going to be like a quick Max overtake right there, but just all around, you just say that was a great start from the McLarens, just full stop. Even like Piastri, the attack that he was able to go on, I think he attacked at like multiple opportunities in those couple opening laps, which I thought was just like great to see. Where the McLarens are definitely using the pace that they've been given by the lads and gals at the factory.
Yeah, I agree with you because I think for one, I was like, and obviously I'm a Max fan, I'm a Red Bull fan, but I was pumped to see Lando in front. But I had that little like not sinking, but in the back of my mind, just like, oh, well, other people have had better starts off the line than Max this year, too. And he still is ahead of them by, like, the end of the lap. And so to, like you said, see Lando take the lead, but not just take it, hold it for 5 laps was impressive. Even through the first lap or two of DRS from the Red Bull, it took Max a little time to be able to get past and get his tires right and everything. But Piastri as well. Like, I'm just super impressed with him, and that start from him was phenomenal. I really enjoyed watching him try and send it a little after Max.
Yeah, and to the degree that like some of those attack attempts were very close to getting the overtake done. Would he have been able to make it stick? Who knows? But yeah, I just think he was driving very aggressively, and it was quite exciting. Definitely opening stint to the race, but also like that didn't even just like peter out. Lando ends up getting the P2 in the race. Oscar Piastri getting his best result in Formula One, P4 for him. So just like like you had alluded to basically at the top of the show, just an insane turnaround from McLaren to like we saw the glimmer of it last time out in Austria. Piastri doesn't have them though, but now when he does, like he actually delivers on it. He hits that same mark that Lando did. Lando was P4 in Austria. Now Piastri's here P4. Lando able to do better on that result, and this is I think the best result for McLaren this year so far.
Yeah. Oh, by far. Yeah.
Yeah, by a margin here. So yeah, it's just and it's the kind of result that makes you believe like, oh yeah, this is definitely more to come. It doesn't feel like a oh this is a track dependent performance. Like, oh, it's not going to be like this.
I think I'm still like tempering my excitement a little bit because I know from hearing particularly Lando talk about the car and everything, like Silverstone does suit their car very well because of the high speed turns. Their car manages the tires really well through those high speed turns, so they're able to like go all out like through um, a couple of the section. Not I'm thinking like Cops and a couple of the other turns later on. They were really like that's where they were getting a lot of their lap time ahead of some of the other cars, including like at the end. Lewis was saying how Lando would get through turns 14 and 15 and just be gone and just kind of take off like a rocket. So I think this track definitely suited their car very well, but I think the upgrades in general are definitely promising for future races as well. Mm-hmm. I just don't know if they'll hook it up quite that well in all of the upcoming races, but it's definitely a big step forward for them and the team, which I'm excited for because it was tough to watch Lando and how much they were struggling at the beginning. I like Lando a lot, and I'm also just very impressed with Oscar and his performances.
Yeah, I would big time agree. I think Piastri has been the most interesting rookie to watch so far that I've seen come into Formula One. So that's a great result for them, and just like as a fan, a fun thing to see a team that was really struggling in the first stint of the season here and is able to have like two back-to-back pretty stellar weekends. Is just I think it's good for the goose and good for the gander for sure.
Yeah, and great for the organization, like to see the payoff from the work they put in. Yeah. But definitely a little bit of some nail biting last few laps when we had the safety car come out, bunch up the pack and everything. We had Lando was having a Lewis moment going, we're on the hard tires, what are they on behind us? And they're like, new softs. And it's like they weren't actually new softs, they had a couple laps on them from quali, but nonetheless, that radio message is probably pretty brutal to hear, but Lando just drove so well. And the hard tires ended up they ended up working out better. I still don't know if it was the right decision necessarily, because if you throw him on the softs, he probably doesn't have to battle and Lando couldn't make a mistake on those hard tires in the first couple laps after the restart. Right. Otherwise, he was in trouble. If he was on softs, he probably would have been able to hold the lead that he had on Lewis a little bit more easily, and then his tire deg would have just been the same as the other guys. So in that sense, I feel like it's still the soft tires were probably the better strategy to not force him into a pretty rough fight. The pace at the end of the race was better on the hard tire, but if he had been behind Lewis at that point because Lewis beat him with the softs on the hards, then it might not have mattered if the hards were faster towards the end. So it's it still might not have been the right call from McLaren, even though it worked out. But that was an exciting little bit of racing between the two of them, and some really, really good clean racing, fair from both sides. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I think from Zach Brown's perspective in the interview after the race, he was talking about it being a gamble, but they felt confident in the data that they had about the hard tire, that they were confident that that was going to be the right tire to be on for specifically the end of the race, where they would be pretty guaranteed to have just be in a healthier tire position than everybody else behind them, while understanding the risk of what those opening laps of the restart would have been. So I think that was an interesting kind of insight into ultimately what I agree with you. It just seemed very risky based on the decisions of the other teams that were behind the McLarens at that point in the race. But yeah, definitely worked out for them. But kind of would have been one of those things where they probably would have felt silly if it was just like an easy choice to be on the softs and
Yeah, I think it could have backfired, but
big time.
but yeah, and the other side. So for Oscar, just an unfortunate way for it to end for him with getting the P4. Like it's crazy thinking with how McLaren has been and all that P4 for their second car is like a disappointment. But Lewis really he got very good fortunate timing with that safety car. They were kind of holding off for it. That was kind of what they felt like they needed to do to hopefully be able to steal that position and everything. So tough for Oscar because he really did nothing wrong. Like they made the right decisions. He drove great for almost the entire race in that third position.
Agreed.
And the timing was just unfortunate, but that's the way that racing goes. So it's like there's something to look forward to saying, hey, I did nothing wrong and this happened. Like, what else could I do? Like, you can't be upset with like anything with yourself or anything. You can just be like, bad luck. And like legitimately just bad luck in that situation for him. So
Luckily,
I think,
not costing too much though.
no, and I think like there is a lot of excitement that he is going to be able to continue these performances, and as Lando and the team kind of said, like his time will come. But he's definitely the most exciting rookie that we've seen in our time watching F1, and probably like I don't know if there's been a more exciting rookie since potentially Max. Like because I think Max had a podium in his first year with Toro Rosso. I'm pretty sure. And
okay, that's cool.
There's probably I can't think of anyone else who would immediately come to mind as a better rookie than Oscar since. But the biggest thing, and so I can promise you that this was by far McLaren's best performance of the season, because they had 29 constructors points coming into this race. They took away 30 after this race, so they more than doubled their points
and more
in
than they
one
earned in the
race.
whole year.
Yep. Then they had the rest of the year and jumped over Alpine in the standings.
Let's go
Up into P5 in the constructors, but obviously looking at them, there were some other big performances. For one, Alex Albon again, a huge P8. The pace he had at the end, getting past the Ferraris, who were really struggling, was awesome. I was pumped to see that for Williams in their 800th race as a constructor.
Huge to get points on that day.
Huge. Even Logan Sargent, he ends up getting P11, just like a second and a half off of the points. So an awesome drive from him with the upgrades now. And so that I think like it excites me about his potential, and also like Williams. Like if Logan Sargent, who's struggled through a decent bit of the season and all, now with the upgrades in the Williams, is like just on the verge of getting a point there, that's a pretty exciting thing for the Williams team in terms of their car, and hopefully for his progress as well. It can't all be the car, but I think that's a great performance from Logan Sargent, and awesome for Williams.
The I think one of the more unfortunate moments from the weekend, we had talked a little bit about Gasly in the, Alpha Tauri conversation. But this is a double DNF for Alpine
Yeah.
on Sunday, where Ocon having car trouble, and then goddamn Lance Stroll, fucking pay driver Lance Stroll, fucking wings it back onto the track and literally just like takes out
Oh,
Pierre. It's like super unfortunate. Penalties tossed his way, but I think to the caster commentator's point, not enough when you take a driver out, but you get to like your race, you get to continue on in your race.
yeah.
Big time unfortunate, and in a weekend where we see some other constructors having these like landmark weekends, Alpine is just like, can we get the fuck out of Silverstone, please?
Oh yeah, and
Yeah.
like brutal for Ocon, the hydraulic issue and everything that took him out. But Gasly had a tough go. He had his little tiff with Carlos Sainz that prompted a little post race, little nudge on Carlos's shoulder from Pierre. Where Carlos really squeezed him like onto the grass. And to be honest, like yes, Carlos was ahead, but like didn't give him a car's
Any room.
width. So kind of fair for Pierre to be upset about that, but also just like to go from that, he's already like upset having not a bad race, but not the best race, and then for Lance to just like it's just so ridiculous to just watch Lance hit the curb and then like obviously it wasn't intentional, but he hit the curb going around the corner and just skipped across the track right into Pierre. And then but like the part that just gets me is that Lance is always like there was no man, the car slid on me or nothing. It was like not my fault, like right off the bat. So a tough weekend for Pierre for sure. I'm sure Alpine will come back and improve and really battle with McLaren for that fifth position. But yeah, like get me out of Silverstone is I'm guarantee that they are agreeing with you, and that was the entire thought process for the rest of the day. Like start tearing down the tent. Do we have any media we have to do? Nope. All right, get wheels up in 10.
Oh yeah. Damn, wheels up in 10. That's funny. Fucking like media pen not even done yet, and they're just like, all right, we're rolling out of here.
Yeah, just get them get them to Hungary. But yeah, a tough day for Pierre. And then of course I would be I always do this, but I would be remiss to not talk about Max Verstappen and 6 race wins in a row. Tying only, I think it was 3 others, Sebastian Vettel, Ayrton Senna, and I'm blanking on the other gentleman. I don't think it was Schumacher. I could be wrong. He might have been in it, but there's maybe Prost. But I think there's 4 other drivers who have had 6 race wins in a row, which Max has joined. And then, of course, Red Bull tying McLaren as the only team or the only constructor to have 11 consecutive wins, where McLaren did that back in 1988 through from Brazil to Belgium. But the closest other ones were Ferrari in 2002, a little bit of Hamilton and Nico Rosberg for Mercedes, twice hitting that 10 wins in a row, and Hamilton and Valtteri hitting it once as well.
Right, but never being able to break the record, being able to match.
Nope. So not being able to get there even in the like super dominant stretches with Mercedes and everything as well.
Dude, well, that's what's crazy is you would have thought that you would have thought the sentence was, it was the first time a team has done that since Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes went on that run. But that's only,
It was, yeah, just so Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez tying Prost and Senna in their run of 11 consecutive race wins. And at the end of the race,
it doesn't look like it's gonna stop.
At the end of the race, Christian Horner came on and Max was at 11 in a row for the team, and Christian was like, "You're not gonna stop, are you?" And Max was like, "Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm gonna keep going." So, and just at the moment, like there doesn't seem to be a team that will snatch that away yet. So I would not be shocked to see it, but at the same time, we are at a point in the season where the reliability of the cars is going to start to come a little more in question. We saw it with the hydraulics of the Alpine. We saw it with the Haas cars and engines and everything going up in flames. So we are kind of getting to that, change the engine or keep it and hope for the best kind of area. So you never know what could happen. I mean, if we have a tough day for Red Bull or Max's car or something like that, it could very easily snap in a second. So
yeah, but we're just talking about streaks and records, though.
Oh, I mean, absolutely. It's right. Definitely
like the season is locked.
No, the season, yeah, but just in terms of
whoa, that's so funny.
Breaking this 11 in a row would still be there's no guarantee. I mean, even looking at the Red Bull car and how we assume that they should continue, the question is reliability gonna get them, and more so than it is another team gonna get them at this point.
Well, just the way you were talking, you could think like we were having a different conversation, but it's like, oh no, we're just talking about records and
just talking about records,
just extending the massive leads.
Yeah, because I mean, Red Bull has 411 constructors points. Mercedes has 203. It's a pretty tight fight there. Max is at a point where he could finish P2 for every race for the rest of the season and still win the Constructors' Championship. Yeah. So he's under a lot of pressure.
Definitely, it sounds like it.
But yeah, it's definitely just something to keep an eye on in terms of that. But more so, looking forward to seeing teams' progresses like McLaren and honestly Williams. I've been absolutely loving how well Alex Albon has been performing. It warms my heart to see that boy putting on a show out there. I love it.
Did you say Max?
Alex.
Oh, gotcha.
Albon.
They sound so similar. Why? How are you going from Max to Alex?
I'm just looking at the looking forward. My focus is not on these records and things like that.
It's not?
No.
Because that's what all the fans believe is the focus of the drivers. That's what they just think they're constantly focusing on. Max is excited to
yeah.
You have to think about these records as much as Max is what my argument is.
Probably.
He cares so much.
Oh, big time. Big time.
Right.
But no, I'm just looking like forward to the upcoming races and all. I'm, like we said, super tight contest for the top of the constructor standings. But like looking at some of these other teams that have progressed recently, the Williams, the McLaren, and all in particular as two that are recency bias at the forefront of memory.
Gotcha. Okay.
I'm excited to see those things more so than records and all, because I don't know, like a record like that, like what are you gonna say? Oh, they have the record for most wins in a row, and then you just go on to the next race and race again. Like it is a interesting thing to look back on and to be able to compare stretches of dominance and things like that. But I'm definitely more intrigued by the upcoming races in terms of teams like McLaren, Williams, Daniel Ricciardo, and the Alpha Tauri, and seeing how those teams progress and kind of fight in the middle more than the absolute bloodbath of a nail biter at the top of the grid.
I understand. I must have been day drifting or something. I was like, "How are you? You're all over the road here."
Day drifting. I haven't heard that. I like that.
Day drifting. Well, yeah. Who knows what's going on? But I understand the other storylines that you're able to look forward to in the season that can give us some like weekend or like race in and race out excitement where some things may not be so. But yeah, those are a couple good ones to look at. The Daniel Ricciardo, the Alex Albon, and the McLaren package here.
Yeah. So we'll I'm sure we'll have more conversations on some of these things, upgrades and all, as we're leading into the Hungarian Grand Prix in 2 weekends. But to wrap us out, any final closing remarks for this British Grand Prix?
No, I don't think so. I think it was just an exciting one. We didn't even talk about, Lewis Hamilton on the podium as well. We talked a little bit about it with Piastri.
Great final remark.
Double British podium, a couple of hometown boys on the hometown podium. I thought that was pretty cool.
First time since 99. First time this century. Weird thing to say. But it's kind of amazing that it's been 24 years since that's happened. Like that's pretty wild. And yes, so that is a good note to touch on. We did talk about his battle with Lando a little bit at the end, but Lewis drove a great race and put himself in a good spot. So big. I enjoy seeing him on the podium at the British Grand Prix.
Same.
Some people are probably like iffy on, but like he's so good with the crowd, and that is the best crowd for him on the podium. Like that's cool. That's fun.
Dude, he just lays on the cheese, though. Literally, the first thing he says is like, we didn't do this. It was the crowd that did this. Like, I didn't do anything at all. It's like, okay, all right, dude.
But that's how his post race things always are, and
deflects right off of him and just like gives love to the crowd right away. No, it's like modus operandi. I get it. It was just like. For that one specifically, it's just like a whole another layer of cheese.
Oh, well, 100%. And it was funny, though. I think my favorite part of his post-race interview was that he's like, yeah, it was just really great. It's always great to be here in Silverstone, be on the podium and everything. Like, thank you so much, everyone. And then, who was it, Coulthard, who was doing the interview, is like, wonderful atmosphere, and so Lewis, why don't you take us out of here? And it's like, he just did, bro. Like, he just wrapped it up and said his closing remarks, and then you're like, and throw it back to you.
Damn, I didn't even catch that. I must have gotten a drink or something. Dude, that's a nightmare.
It was fun, and he just kind of repeated, kind of just said, like, not the same exact thing, but
Sure.
was just like, yeah, it's always great to be here at Silverstone. Like, great crowd, great weekend, God bless, and like dipped.
Scooted.
It was.
Hell yeah.
So
Damn, that's funny.
I would
Good on him.
definitely, I would check it out because I was cracking up. I'm like, he gave his closing remark, and Coulthard's like, do it again.
Damn, that's too good. Okay, so then yeah, I'm glad I brought that up because I didn't catch that. I'm gonna go check that out. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, I think great Silverstone weekend. I had a blast watching the race. Looking forward to Hungary.
It's a fun circuit to watch, and it was definitely one of the better races of the season for sure. But to kind of continue through the episode, we had some League of Legends action. We'll start off over in the LPL. We had the top Esports versus OMG series that we're looking at, and so. Two teams that are kind of towards the top side of the standings. OMG's in sixth place there, so well within that playoff contention for the LPL.
This battle though was to lock in your top 4 spot. The loser got locked out of the top 4.
Right. Well, and with the gap there with Billy Gaming, JDG, LNG, and Top Esports, they have that pretty decent gap there. So it does make sense, but that does also remind us that we're quickly working our way here towards the end of the split and more towards Worlds. But yeah, a big matchup for both sides, and OMG honestly really impressed me with their performance coming out of the gates and all. They had a real hot start in game 1, getting some kills and the dragon. Even Abel getting dove in the bot lane. He's able to trade the kill onto Jackie Love. And it was just a very back and forth series throughout, and a little chaotic in some of the team fights and all. It felt very it didn't feel like either team really had full control over any of those team fights throughout the series. It was very, very back and forth in most of those games and everything. But Top Esports tries to fight back, gets a nice win in Dragon. I felt like OMG's engage in that fight was just a little bit too disjointed. And so it felt like throughout the series, whichever team had the most cohesive little death ball ended up coming out on top of these fights, because a lot of them were very disjointed engages or defenses on the losing team's side of the fight.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the team compositions from both sides that they drafted, you have a bunch of, you have a lot of engage tools, a lot of crowd control tools, a lot of like pick tools from both sides, a decent amount of mobility, especially, well, just like with the Kai'Sa, and you saw both Abel and Jackie Love using the Kai'Sa to pretty stellar results. Obviously, Jackie Love just like popping off in game 3, but both like Abel, the game that Abel played Kai'Sa, they were able to take a victory. I think the backline access that Kai'Sa gives offers a lot for a team comp that wants to be in your face and trying to get on top of the carries, with your Renekton and Vi and the Sylas as well. What was interesting about, and I was kind of thinking about this in game 1, like it, and only because of the Varus pick, but it seems like it seems like teams are really only opting into the Varus if you have your AD playing like a different role than maybe some other players are. Like, do you think Jackie Love may have a different like have different responsibilities? Like, are they using him as like secondary engage? Like, why do you think they're bringing like more of a utility champ like Varus? Because I think of the alt bringing a solid amount of engage to a team comp. Why do you think they put him on that?
I think the ideal in this, and I'd have to like just to look back at the picks and bans. So from top esports side, you get the first pick. You get the first pick Cassante, and then OMG counters with the Vi and Kaisa. So you have a little bit of CC, a little bit of brawliness with the Cassante, and then you go for that Annie Wukong on your next round. So you're just doubling down on this CC, this engage, this team fighting and everything. Then in the second round of bans, you have the Xayah and Draven banned out. So you've got Tristana, Xayah, Draven all banned out as bot lane champions. So I feel like in this instance, you're not going for the Varus in terms of more engage. The idea in my mind is you have all this engage. If you layer all of this CC between the Varus ult, the Nautilus ult, the Annie ult, the Wukong ult, and everything, and Cassante's disruption and everything as well, if you can layer that just consistently, then you should just wipe out OMG. But it also does give you a little bit of survivability from the Varus, which just looking at like the top tiers of bot laners, like yes, you could have played the Aphelios, but if Kaisa dives on you, or Rel CCs you, or Silas comes at you, or Vi dives at you, like there's so much go in on OMG's side that at least having that ult gives you a little bit of protection that you can maybe keep yourself out of the middle of just getting dove on.
Gotcha. Yeah, and that makes sense to me. I just thought it was interesting whether that was like a player play style thing, if that's like where they wanted him to be, or if it was just kind of a, if we all just press R, these guys are definitely gonna die. And it seems like that was kind of more the priority. I thought it was really interesting watching Cream prioritizing both the Silas and then the Akali in game 2. I think that was really fun. Kind of gave me like Zeka flashbacks, right?
Yeah.
Able to really utilize those champs, I would argue, pretty well into like really unfavorable matchups. Cream into rookies, Annie in map 1, and then map 2 playing into the what the fuck is her name?
Nico.
The Nico.
I did that just the other week.
Yeah, it's just like brutal matchups for Cream in that mid lane. So interesting that he wanted to focus that, and I think he was able to play the games out pretty well. Obviously, that game 2 not really able to have like significant impact like he was able to have on the Silas, but overall, I don't think the champs look bad for him. But yeah, it was an interesting series, especially from the perspective of like even when OMG was like at a gold deficit, there was, like you had alluded to at the top, like there were a bunch of fights that they were still able to win, like just off the back of like a good flank from Shanji on the Renekton. Like they even knew he was there, but they were able to take like total control of the fight. So there's
and I
think some good stuff there from ONG. Go ahead.
I definitely agree, and I think that like to continue on that, like the back and forth fights and like OMG being able to pick some of the right fights, I think highlights for me some of the weaker spots of top esports, even though they come out on top of this. So
Sure.
we've obviously watched JDG, we've watched Gen G, and some of these teams that we consider to be kind of the cream of the crop in League of Legends at the moment. And when we see JDG in these games get a 2,000 gold lead and couple turrets, couple kills, there may be a level up here and there across the board, they're picking their fights around the map, and they are controlling that macro of the game so heavily where they aren't allowing any leeway for anyone to climb back. They're so decisive of, like, this is the next thing we do, then okay, we did that, this is the next thing we do, everyone's on the same page. It felt like with Top Esports and OMG, and to OMG's benefit and credit, that it was very much not a, oh, okay, like JDG. Okay, we got a kill and a turret in the top lane. Let's move to the bot lane. We're going to set up around Dragon and all. In this matchup, it was very much like, okay, Dragon's coming up soon, so we're going to fight. Like, it wasn't a, okay, we're going to, like, set it up, control, look for the pick, okay, like back out, oh, let's maneuver around this way. It was very much like, all right, it's time to brawl, let's fight, yeah. Like, duel, like, let's go. Which I think, like, highlights just the some of the gaps. Like, obviously the team fighting that we saw from both sides when the teams had their favorable positioning and everything, we saw both OMG and Top Esports have some really good team fights, really good play, and outmaneuvering in those individual fights from each other. Mm-hmm. But when you compare that to the Gen Gs, the JDGs, the gap really is like that control of the game flow, I feel like, which was a little bit more open in this, even with Top Esports winning both game 2 and 3 in a pretty quick fashion. It was more of a, all right, Dragon's up, let's fight. Okay, we won now, and let's take Baron, and now we won the next fight, and we end. It was, they get to that end game, and they can close it out properly and everything, but the path to get there is a little bit more open-ended.
Yeah, for sure. A little bloodier than we're used to.
Yeah. And to talk about just, you highlighted Jackie Love's Kaisa, but I do find it interesting. I feel like we're seeing a little bit more frequent in these team comps that there are comps that are a bit squishier. I mean, in game 1, Top Esports had a relatively squishy comp. The Cassante has a little bit of tankiness, and the Nautilus, of course. But I feel like the Kaisa thrives in these matchups where they just have the ability to blow someone up. And in game 2, with Renekton, Wukong, Akali, Aphelios, and Melio, like, there is no one real tanky on that side for OMG. And so when Jackie Love can get to that back line, he is going to blow someone up. It's not a situation, and we'll get into it when we talk about the LCK, but we saw a couple of situations in that series where the Kaisa in game 2 gets to the back line and they go for someone and can't get the kill and burn so much. But in these matchups where you do have a very squishy comp on the other side, the Kaisa can be so huge, especially in those later game team fights. It does so much damage.
Yeah, big time. And I think he was just given the right openings and just, you know, funneled all the gold, especially in game 3. I mean, he was racking up all the kills. They closed that out in like 24 minutes. He was damn near close to having like a kill a minute in that game, which would have been crazy, like actually disgusting. It was maxed out with a quadra kill that game.
And between kills and assists, he had one per minute. So
one takedown per minute, you could say.
Yeah, one takedown per minute. if you
There you go.
if you want to break it down that way. But yeah, game 3 was just it was the Jackie Love show. I did also just find it interesting seeing Wayward play the Ornn a couple times, because that is not as common of a pick right now. But into Shanji's Renekton, it gave him that survivability and all, and then they utilized the ults well in the team fights. But definitely a strong series from Top Esports, but like I said, there are definitely some weaknesses that I felt were highlighted. And on OMG's side, I didn't think they played poorly. I feel like they have some really solid components and all that they can continue to build on, but they're I think the way that it shook out was kind of the way that it should have, in terms of the levels the teams are at the moment.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, overall, I think it was a really fun series to watch. The win from OMG in game 1, quite surprising. Kind of puts us en route for that full 3 games. So yeah, I think it was a great series from the LPL this week.
Definitely. But over in the LCK, I briefly touched on it, but we had the Hanwha Life Esports and Kwangdong Freaks series. So why don't you start us off there?
This was a series, I think, from depending on what point you tune in on game 1, you may be thinking, oh, this is definitely for sure going all 3. Kwangdong Freaks definitely wins here. Or maybe that was game 2, or maybe that was just kind of the whole feel of the whole series. But to start off in game 1, what I thought was pretty interesting, where previously we had been talking about like a very high Milio priority. We were seeing him being traded for other champions. He's fallen kind of down the favor a little bit more, I think, with this is on patch 13.12, I believe. So with Milio, where he is on that patch, still obviously a pick to think about, but obviously not something that Kwangdong Freaks was willing to, first pick. We see other heroes being a little more, or other champions being a little more prized, but they still wanted him in the team comp for what he does offer. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Where Kwangdong Freaks had the potential to ban the Rel in game 1. They opted to say, we'll give you the Rel, we'll take the Milio in that matchup and get, a decent kind of mid to late game duo here in the bottom lane. But outside of the pick and ban, I thought that was just some kind of like interesting priority things, kind of meta shifts that you could talk about. Zeka back on the Yone, super exciting. Him back on these like melee carry champs is fun. But I think the real star of game 1 here for Hanwha Life was Grizzly. Make some key moves in the early game to kind of set up the advantage. Has a beautiful interrupt on Bulldog's Tristana around that dragon fight. Makes him have to flash over the wall. He just flash follows anyway. Zek is able to follow up. So I thought Grizzly was playing very aggressive, very heads up in the in the early stages of that game. And then I really got to highlight and kind of call into question, there's a team fight in the bottom lane where Kwangdong Freaks is in a decent position to actually win the fight, but they choose to teleport Bulldog like right into the center of Jax and Sejuani, where he has to immediately burn his rocket jump, get into the alcove, and try and fire from there. But it's like most of the fight is already over. I think that was just where they lost the fight, in the sense that if they have Bulldog teleport to that turret that was just steps away from the fight, I actually think they would have been in a position to get more damage out of that carry and at least put them in a position to do more damage, because this was one where Viper was just able to fly in, isolate targets, get on the opposite side of the fight, and just clean up. So the kind of bad day for Kwangdong Freaks kind of started there with I would argue, a missed teleport there from Bulldog. There is a redeeming moment from Kwangdong. They're able to get a solid fight. give Viper his one death of the game. They get a really solid flank on him to get the full fight win, take the Drake. They even run across the river. They scoop up a Baron. And this is when you're thinking, you're like,
Oh yeah,
holy shit. Like,
it might
all right.
happen.
Yeah, like it actually looked really good. So Kwangdong Freaks, they're pushing into the base. They actually get as far as the mid lane inhibitor. They crack through that. They get a little bit of an engage. They get Viper. They get Zeka just like blinking, but they don't get the kills. Han Wildlife is able to push out of their base, scoop up a kill or two, and then like the way they played their mid wave and their side lanes, they were able to get to an objective or two earlier, get some vision set up. Han Wildlife is able to actually claw back this advantage that I would argue they handed away down at the Dragon Pit.
Yeah.
So Han Wildlife able to bring it back from, I would argue, the grips of death there in that scenario for game one.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree. I was when Kwangdong took the Baron, I was very much leaning in their favor in terms of the win. But once Hanwha Life kind of recollected themselves, I think what was impressive for me from their side was just watching their macro play. They were trading some objectives back and forth with Kwangdong, but always coming out slightly on top, getting like an inner inhibit or an inner turret instead of an outer turret or something like that, just with the back and forth trades always being a little bit of a step ahead of Kwangdong Freaks. And pressuring the map well until they get those picks in the team fight at Dragon, and are able to kind of start closing out from there. And then a quick shout out to Viper with his 12 kill game, hitting his 1,000th kill there over in the LCK.
Oh, that's sick.
So that was a little mini highlight for that game. And going into game two, it was like a little bit of a flip in terms of the team comps. We saw a lot of the kind of champions and all, or even just the comp being kind of swapped around. We had the double marksman going to Hanwha Life side as opposed to Kwangdong's. The Jax being traded over as well. The Maokai swapping sides. So a kind of little reverse matchup going into game two a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, especially because we had the two supports that were played in game one. We had them banned like in first rotations from the teams, so they're gonna have to get a different look, kind of go a different route. So comfortable to kind of swap up some champions, swap up some roles. But yeah, again, this is one where Kwangdong Freaks, they're actually like off to a fine start. You see Viper and Life like big time disrespecting the fact that Grizzly just walked away. They had no support there anymore. They had no support, and they were comfortable to take every trade that was offered to them. It backfires significantly. Young Jay comes in. They're able to just flip that aggression right back on Viper and Life's head, and this actually like opens up the advantage for Kwangdong Freaks, which they're able to play from significantly. They're using that advantage pretty well. Honestly, I think a lot of it came down to Bulldog just getting bullied in these fights. He missed so many key ultimates. Yeah. His abilities were just so late or off or just totally red. Like the hop away that Zeka has in the mid lane from Bulldog's ult, like he saw that before the game even started. He was filling up his water at the water fountain and he had visions of that move and he was like, I know when he's coming. Like that, he flashed that miles before it ever came. So from that angle, I think there's like big mid diff going on in this scenario. But overall, I think from like a team macro perspective, I think Kwangdong Freaks was like making some pretty solid moves.
Yeah, well, and it was interesting too because this was such a drawn out game. We have first blood at 7 minutes. First dragon, I think, was like close to like 20 minutes. It was just a very slowly played out game, and I think for me, from Hanwha Life side, that did feel like Kwangdong was controlling it because they have the better scaling comp. They have the Jax that gets busted late game, the Sejuani that gets super tanky, the Azir and Kai'Sa that have so much late game damage. So that is just playing into Kwangdong's hands in terms of what they're looking for to scale up, is to play that slow game and just slowly chip away until your champions do outscale. But again, like with these kind of disjointed team fights that we start to have later on in the game, where there's just 3 people on each side down to a sliver of health, to the point that I'm pretty sure from the one Gragas W barrel slam, the splash damage gets the double kill there.
Well, and that keeps them alive.
In the top side jungle near the red buff, and yeah, it keeps them alive. He goes down, but it ends up, instead of being a 3-2 kind of situation in Kwangdong's favor, we end up with a 1-1 left on the map on either side. So they played out the team fights well on Hanwha's side later on in the game, even with, like I said, Kwangdong having the better scaling comp for that late game.
I think there was, like, I would argue from Kwangdong's side, I think there was some late game decision making that was lacking. I think from Young Jay's perspective and what he was willing to do, like he didn't calculate into his system that Hanwha Life was willing to flash hook him and just like burn as many cooldowns as they could. Like Life hooked, like intentionally hooked Young Jay, I think it was 3 times before Young Jay actually dies to the hook. But he putting himself in these positions where it was this attitude of like, oh, I don't care if they hook me, I'm the one who they're supposed to hook.
Boy, like,
right. And it happened like one too many times. And I would argue from like a macro perspective, they should have pushed the advantage before Viper gets the LDR. Because if you pay attention, Young Jay doesn't die to those picks until after Viper has that LDR, and then he's back to the death chamber for 44 seconds. Hanwha Life is able to get the Baron, and then that's literally just good game. And it was Young Jay just like basically just not playing around his team and just putting himself too far out to where they can't help him, and then he just dies.
Well, and even slightly before that, talking about Kwangdong's like kind of lacking in the macro perspective, the first Baron they gave up for like nothing. It was they had a little skirmish, everyone bases, Hanwha Life comes back, controls the objective, takes Baron without much of a fight, and then just pushes Kwangdong off. Like there was no, oh, they're taking Baron, we need to fight. Like we're late game, we need to go. They were just, it was complacent a little bit on the side of Kwangdong in that initial Baron, which starts to creep Hanwha's gold advantage a little bit. But then, like you said, the pick on Young Jay on the Sejuani was really that key to tip everything forward. They get the Elder Dragon, then the Baron right after and everything, and from that point on are able to close out. So a really slow game, and in terms of that, the comp of Kwangdong should have been the better late game team comp, but I think the lack of that pressure and everything from themselves with the macro when they had the opportunity really does come back to bite them.
Yeah, so I think from Kwangdong's side, you can look at, some things to improve on, but, the other side of it as well is like, Hanwha Life's record going into this matchup wasn't that much better either. So pretty even as far as standings, as far as their record goes. But yeah, going into that mid and late game, definitely some decision making and some macro stuff that they have to shore up. But overall, even though it was a 2-0, being that Kwangdong had some pretty convincing either comeback potential or like early game advantage. Even for that reason, I think it was still a pretty exciting series to watch and see Hanwha kind of overcome these these moments in the series.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you because it was, like you said, a pretty similar standings battle. It was a 5-4 Hanwha Life versus a 4-5 Kwangdong Freaks. So not the biggest gap, but it did show with Hanwha Life's ability to make the most of the advantages they had and to hang around and jump when they had the opportunities. So props to them, but definitely some upside for Kwangdong if they can get a little bit more decisive and maybe some slightly better decision making in terms of some teleports, positioning, and things like that. They're not too far off from being competitive there with Hanwha Life to make that more of maybe a 3-game series or take the win.
Yeah, big time. But yeah, overall, a couple of good series this week, both from the LPL and the LCK. A little bit of news out of the LCK, just to touch on T1 a little bit. Coach Bengi fucking leaves after the implosion, you could call it. The, injury that Faker is dealing with, I guess, is causing a little more damage to the team than they may have hoped. So yeah, I just hope he begins to feel better soon, so the T1 woes can subside here.
Yeah, definitely, and Bangi obviously a legend in terms of the League of Legends world, but it's definitely an interesting time to see him take his leave from the team as they're
it's tough.
sliding down the standings a bit. Still not quite in the danger zone of not making it into playoffs at least, but definitely out of that realm of possibilities for a bye or being at the top of the table. So they'll have to fight their way through, and now they'll have to readjust their coaching kind of strategies and all, or at least the kind of internal elements of that with Bengi leaving.
So just some unfortunate news at the end of the at the end of the esports section here.
Yeah, but at the same time, a really great career for Bangi as both player and coach, and it's just unfortunate timing for T1 while they're dealing with a lot of struggles to have that change impact the team as well.
Yeah, big time. But just couple of pretty good series here this week. Looking forward to have a couple of more weeks here, but going to be quickly into playoffs. Then we have regional qualifiers, and then we'll be into the World Championship. So kind of getting into the closing second half of the summer split, I guess you would say here.
Yep, working our way towards Worlds, but I guess to move on, did you have any Magic that you want to touch on, or
nothing that's light work? Maybe a conversation for a day when we have a little more time. Why don't we just get the people on out of here? Give us the flavor of the week here.
Sounds good. I'll run through it pretty quickly. But for food, we had kava for dinner, so Mediterranean Chipotle. I always enjoy it. It's a tasty meal, and for podcast nights, it's nice to sometimes pick something up instead of cooking and have something a little bit quicker. So that is my food for this week. For my music, I went through and had another little powwow of going through all the saved TikTok music genre things that I've saved over the past couple months, and started saving songs and like looking into these artists a bit more on Spotify. So I was going through those and just to shout out a couple of different ones. Joe West, a rapper that I've come across, has some solid stuff from what I've heard so far. So looking to dive into him more, along with Secret Tree Fort, who are a little bit of a more of a country vibe. Jack Kays, who's got a indie kind of rougher, like almost country but not, but all kind of punk rock but not kind of vibe, and a number of other artists. So I've been enjoying going through and kind of pulling some of their music, and I've been listening to a playlist of all of those songs that I've like pulled over the past few days to kind of say, oh, I like this one, I'll look into that guy more, or oh, that one, like the little clip on Spotify was the best part of the song, and so the rest of it's kind of So I've run into a little bit of, it's a mixed bag, but it's fun to go through. But for my visual medium, Colleen and I have picked Schitt's Creek back up, which we've enjoyed as a kind of casual watching during dinner, just like easy to throw on kind of show. And so we've enjoyed getting back into that a little bit and working our way a little further. But that is my flavor of the week for this week.
Now, was a flavor of has the movie Adam Project been one of your flavor of the weeks before? Have you ever seen that movie on Netflix?
I have heard of it, but I don't think that I have not seen it. And
okay, gotcha.
Actually, I lie. I did watch this. I watched it without Colleen, and she got upset at me. I don't remember if it was a flavor of the week, but I did watch it because
interesting.
There was a day that she was doing something else. I was like, oh, I'll just throw this on, not thinking she would be interested. And afterwards, she's like, "Why did you watch that without me?"
Right.
But, yeah.
Damn. Okay. Well, that is a visual medium. The one I'm gonna go to is I was going through my external hard drive, and I found, and I thought I did, old DVD rips of Yu-Gi-Oh! Seasons 2 to 5, all of the episodes. So if you remember, I got done season 1, but I could only watch with the dumb advertisements on the thing, so I was like, I'm good. But I literally have the whole rest of the thing just like saved on my hard drive. So I got into that, the Battle City tournament, Kaiba's tournament, and now nice. I'm back in, baby. I'm like, let's go Yu-Gi. So like season 2 of Yu-Gi-Oh! Here's my visual medium. My food here for the week. Sarah had the bread idea. She fried up some bacon. She got some lettuce, some tomato, some rye bread. We just had some classic BLTs last night. I think I'm actually going to have one as a snack again after the pod. Great little snack. I love it. And then my music here for the week, I think, is one that I've talked about like very recently, but I guess it's, kind of earwormed in that scenario. The artist Rhapsody, probably like tangentially known for the feature that she did with Kendrick Lamar on To Pimp a Butterfly on Complexion. She's got a bunch of records herself. I was listening to Crown. I was listening to, what's the other one? Beauty and the Beast that she has. So Rhapsody is just a great listen. Crown is like very inspiring. She has a very like self-love, positivity, self-confident type vibe to her, so it's always kind of inspiring to take a listen, but she's got like hard bars too, so that's my flavor of the week here.
Nice. Well, that's one I'll have to check out. I haven't listened to her too much, so definitely a good recommendation. But as always, ladies and gents, the flavor of the week brings us to the end of the episode, but we appreciate you all taking the time to spend with us. For any section of the podcast that piques your curiosity or interest, as always, you can find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts. Check us out for our smiling faces on YouTube if you want video, or any race companions that we have out there. And hit us up on Twitter at tall and short of one, the number one. But thank you all again for listening this week.
Tell your friends. New episodes every Thursday. We just want to say thank you so much for listening. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for spending your time with us. It's a blast. But yeah, this is another episode of the Tall and Short of It podcast. Peace out, everyone.
See you guys.